Today I'll show you how I put together these kegs to be used in our tavern setting. These are really easy to make and a fun, quick afternoon project. Alright, to start things off, we're going to use some coffee sticks to be the sides of the kegs, a tongue depressor or medium-sized craft stick, a couple of toothpicks for the tap, a hot glue stick, this is kind of the large size, and some aluminum foil tape, as well as some super glue. So to make the kind of form or main body of the keg, we're going to use our hot glue stick, and I'm going to use the grit on my mat here to cut it at roughly a 1/2 inch. So just kind of lining everything up and then doing a rolling firm press down on the utility knife will slowly and kind of easily cut through the hot glue stick. It can get a little stuck at times, but that's okay. You just kind of work it back and forth and it'll eventually cut through. Alright, and once it's been cut through, we're going to have a bunch of little 1/2 inch pieces like these. So now we need to start attaching all of our wooden sections. We're going to start by attaching the top and bottom of the keg. Now I cut a small section off of the craft stick. You might also know these as tongue depressors. We're going to use a little bit of gel super glue to attach the hot glue stick to the cut off piece of the craft stick, and this is going to be the tops and bottoms of our keg. So I'm just going to set this aside to fully cure and dry, and then using a utility knife I'm going to just kind of trim around the craft stick to kind of line everything up with the hot glue stick so that everything is nice and flush. You can try and trace this out and cut it without the glue stick being attached, but this actually is a whole lot easier to do with everything glued together because you kind of have a little guide to work with. You don't have to cut, measure. So this will make things a little bit easier and kind of help with the process, because you'll get a pretty good solid fit and everything will line up correctly in the first try. So as it's being cut, you're going to have a few little rough edges and kind of sharp bits. As that starts to happen, you can kind of try and cut it a little bit more flush or use a piece of sandpaper to sand it down. So with that attached, it's time to start cutting the slats to use for our sides of the keg. So I've got a coffee stick and I've marked these out to just about 3/4 of an inch. This should give us a little bit of playroom on either side of the slat. Now I'm going to cut most of these off camera, but I'll cut one on camera to show you the process that I went through here. So after cutting the first piece out, which is a little difficult at times, we've got a nice little slat here, but it's a little bit too big for the keg. So what I'm going to do is very carefully trace a line with the utility knife and cut this in half. Now I'm going to need a bunch of these. I think it is something like 6 or 7 full-size slats which get cut in half for the whole keg. So once I've cut all those out, I'm going to take the gel super glue and with just a simple line of the glue, attach a slat, make sure it's fully straight on the keg, then another line, and then attach the next one. Now using the gel super glue means it's an instantaneous hold, so it'll make the process a lot faster. You can also use hot glue for this, but I'm not entirely sure if that would work well putting hot glue on hot glue. It might start to warp the overall shape. So I'm using super glue because I know it'll hold everything together and it works pretty quick. So now we need to trim down the longer pieces on the tops and bottoms just to kind of make everything a little bit more even on both sides. Now I still want to have a little bit of a lip, so I'm not cutting everything down flush with the top and bottom of the keg. So that way we have our kind of traditional recessed panel section on the inside of the tops and bottoms. So once everything's been cut flush, I'm going to use an emery board to kind of remove any rough edges and sharp bits on the various panels of the keg. And we can also use this to kind of smooth down the slats themselves to kind of make it have a little bit more of a rounded and smooth to the touch finish. Now, depending on how you want to use these on the table, this may or may not be necessary. I intend to have them a little bit more in the open, so I don't want players to, feel roughness if they decide to pick them up and throw them around the tavern or around the guard post or wherever I happen to have them. So I'm going to do a quick little smooth down of the edges. Now this will collect some sawdust in between the slats. You can kind of blow that out or shake it out or whatever you want to do, just to kind of help with the process of painting in the future. So every good keg needs a keg tap. So to do that, we're going to just kind of cut a 1 to 2 millimeter section off of the end of a toothpick. And again, I'm using that rolling saw-like motion to clip it free. And then using a little bit of the gel superglue and a pair of tweezers, I'm going to grab one, apply the glue to the end of the stick, and then just very carefully place it onto the keg. Now we want it kind of centered but low on one side, because these are going to be sitting on their side so that the liquid inside of them can be poured. So once that's in place, there we go, keg tap. And then we'll set this aside to dry before we move on to the next step. Don't want anything falling off of them. So now, using the aluminum tape or metal tape, we're going to add some straps. Now I cut these to about 1 to 2 millimeters in thickness, and I'm doing a quick little wrap around, leaving about the same space as the width of the tape from the tops and bottoms, and it gives it a very, very nice keg appearance, something that you'd see in a traditional medieval tavern. Now, these straps along with the super glue are going to make this a very, very strong build. Once the straps are attached, this is not coming apart. So now to paint it, we're going to use a little bit of Skeleton Horde from Citadel Paint. This is going to dye the wooden slats and give it a nice kind of oak rustic appearance. So I'm going pretty light on these, just kind of making sure I have full coverage of everything, but the wood kind of soaks in the paint very quickly, so I don't have to do a whole lot to these to ensure that everything is fully coated. And since it absorbs and dries so quick, you can kind of handle these and not worry about getting a whole lot of paint on your fingers. Now, I know in the past when I've used this tape, I've kind of stained it a little bit with a null oil or a dark wash. I'm not going to do that in this case because I want the kegs to catch the eye just a little bit more than some of the previous builds. So I'm going to leave them nice and shiny, just to kind of represent how little wear and tear they've had. Alright, so with that done, I think it's time for some narrative. Your party sits, trying not to draw too much attention. The last job paid well, and all that's left is to find a buyer for a strange sword you found in a hidden room in the target's mansion. Your guild contact, the Fox, told you to find a retired thief at the Half-Full Cup. As the last patron leaves, you begin to think you've been stood up, but the bartender beckons you over, and in a soft whisper says,
"The old fox says you have something for me. Well, let's see it then."
Alright, that's going to be all for today. Come back next week where I show you how I put together these tavern shelves to round out our setup. Thank you all so much for watching. Please hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment in the comments section, and we will see everyone next episode.